Hello everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to knit a pair of fingerless mittens. These fingerless gloves are a great project if you've been looking to learn how to knit with double pointed needles, or if you already know how to knit with them. They are knit with worsted weight yarn, which means they come together very quickly, and they require very little yarn to finish them. As you can see, they have a thumb gusset. So if you've been wanting to learn how to do them, we're going to cover that in this video. And it's a very simple knit. As you can see, these gloves are reversible. That means you only need to learn one technique, knit it twice, and you will have your left and right sides. These gloves are great to keep your hand warm, but your fingers loose, so you can use them for texting, you can use them when you want to knit, crochet, or do any activities that requires your fingers to maintain dexterity. As I mentioned before, we're gonna need worsted weight yarn. Just a little bit is fine. As you can see here, I just have some scrap yarn. It's not a very big ball of yarn. And just for reference, I am using the Caron 1-pound yarn in black, but you can use any kind of worsted weight yarn. I am also using double pointed needles. The size I'm using is 4 millimeters, but you should use any size that will get you gauge. Don't worry about gauge right now, we're going to talk about that later. Let's continue with the materials. I also have a stitch holder, so I can hold the stitches of the gusset and I can continue knitting it around here, and then I can go back to them. If you don't have a stitches holder, you can also use some scrap yarn, and if you want to follow along with the written pattern, all you have to do is go to craftydudes.com and you will find the pattern there. For your gauge, you need to have 17 stitches and 24 rows in stockinette stitch. This pattern features 4 sizes: small, medium, large, and extra large. So now we are ready to cast on our stitches. So just grab one of your double pointed needles, grab your yarn, and we're gonna do a long tail cast on. You will need to cast on 28 stitches for the small size, 30 for the medium, 32 for the large, and 34 stitches for the extra large size. If you are not familiar with the long tail cast on, I have a video on my YouTube channel that will show you step by step and even in slow motion how to get to do the long tail cast on. As you can see here, I go step by step with detailed instructions for every step. So now we're ready to cast on. So grab one of your double pointed needles and you will need to create a loop with your yarn like I'm showing you right here. Place one side of the yarn over your thumb and the other one over your index finger as I'm showing you right here. Then move your needle towards the loop that is created through your thumb over to your index finger, and then you pull it tight, and that is going to create a stitch. Then you just have to repeat the steps. Again, if this is too fast for you, then I will recommend you to go to the video I just mentioned, because that video is going to show you how to do the long tail cast on, and it will be in slow motion. So now all you have to do is cast on all the stitches that you need for the size you are wanting to make. You need 28 stitches for the small size, 30 stitches for the medium size, 32 stitches for the large, and 34 stitches for the extra large size. So here I have all my stitches and they are in one double pointed needle. I did this because it's just easier to cast on all the stitches in only one needle, but now I need to divide them in 3 needles. The 4th needle is going to be to actually work the stitches. So if you have 30 stitches, then all you have to do is divide by 3, and then you will have 10 stitches in each of your double pointed needles. So just start moving your stitches from one needle to the other one until you get all your stitches equally divided in your 3 working needles. Here I have all the stitches that I need on my first needle, so I'm just going to let it drop, and I'm pulling the needle a little bit so all the stitches stay in the middle, and that way they won't fall off. So now I grab my second needle and I do the same thing. I just start moving all the stitches over, and I keep doing it until I have the amount of stitches that is needed for this needle. Now I have all my stitches equally divided into my 3 needles. I'm just counting all the stitches again to make sure that I didn't miss any stitches, and now I will have to join my needles to work in the round. So make sure your stitches are not twisted, and make sure you grab your working yarn and not the long tail yarn that we use for the cast on. Now we're going to need a stitch marker so we can mark the beginning and end of each round. That way we won't get confused and we'll know exactly how many rounds we'll be knitting. Because we're using double pointed needles, we cannot just put it in the beginning and end of the round. We actually have to knit our first stitch. If not, our stitch marker is just going to fall. So I'm just going to knit the very first stitch, and right here I'm going to place my stitch marker. So I will know that when I get to one stitch before the stitch marker is the end of the row, the end of the round, and it's time to start another round. Okay, so now this first round we have to knit 1 and purl 1 to make the ribbing. So I'm gonna purl this next stitch because I already knit the first one. And then I just keep repeating. Knit 1 and purl 1. Now go ahead and repeat this all the way till the end of the round. If you need any help learning how to make the knit stitches or the purl stitches, I also have video tutorials available in my YouTube channel that you can follow along until you get used to making the stitches, and then you can come back to this tutorial. Now that I finished knitting with this needle this size, you can see that I have a free double pointed needle. So I'm just going to move it to my right side. I'm going to grab the next needle in the bunch of 3, and I'm going to do the same with all the stitches that are in this double pointed needle. And I just have to keep following the pattern of knit 1 and purl 1. And of course, at the end, when we're done with this needle, we're going to do the same with the last needle. I'm going to work all the stitches there, and that will make us get to the end of our round. And right here, when we get to that last one, remember that one stitch before is when we're going to stop. So here we have the ribbing that we're going to work, and we have to repeat this for 4 rounds. We're also going to do the ribbing at the top, but don't worry about it, we're going to see that later. Okay, let me move that forward, and let's continue with the pattern of knit 1 and purl 1. Remember that to make all the ribbings, you're going to repeat this round until you get to round number 4. So round 1, 2, 3, and 4 will follow the same pattern of knit 1 and purl 1. Okay, so here I have all my 4 rows worked up. That will make the ribbing right here in the beginning. And now all we have to do is work in knit stitch until we reach right here, this part for the gusset. And if you want to make this glove smaller or larger, you just need to add more rounds of knit stitches. So now you have to knit all the stitches, all the rounds, until this work measures 3 inches from the bottom, from the cast on edge, all the way to the end. So again, just knit every single stitch for as many rounds as you need to make the whole project measure 3 inches. That is, of course, if you want exactly at the same size as the pattern I'm showing you, but feel free to knit less rounds or more rounds if you want a shorter glove or a longer glove. This part is very easy and you don't even have to think much because you don't have to count the rounds. You just have to make sure that both sides have the same size. Again, as I said, right up to here it has to measure 3 inches. And when you reach there, then we're going to work the thumb gusset. But until then, just keep knitting all rounds. After you reach the desired length, we need to shape the gusset. So I'm showing you right here. And you're going to need 2 markers for that. The stitch markers are going to mark the beginning and end of the shaping of the gusset. So I'm just going to finish my very last round, the one that made me get to 3 inches all the way here, as I mentioned before. And now for the following round, the round that you need to start the gusset, you have to knit 15 stitches for small, 17 for medium, 19 for large, and 21 stitches for the extra large size. So here I'm gonna just knit all my stitches for the size that I'm making. And I'm just gonna fast forward, that way you don't have to watch me knit every single stitch. Just remember to knit all the stitches according to the size you're making. So once you have knitted all the stitches for your size, you're gonna grab a stitch marker and you're gonna place it right after all the knitted stitches. Then we're gonna work on the next 2 stitches. What we have to do is to knit front and back on those 2 stitches. So you're gonna knit, but you're not gonna remove the stitch just yet. Then you're gonna go to the back of the stitch as I'm showing you right here, and you're gonna knit it right there as well. So when you had where you had 1 stitch, now you're gonna have 2 stitches, and now you have to repeat this exact same process on the next stitch. So knit that stitch, don't remove it from the opposite needle just yet, go to the back just as I'm showing you right here, and then you're gonna knit the stitch. So those previous 2 stitches have now become 4 stitches, as you can see right here. And now we're gonna grab the second stitch marker and we're gonna place it right at the end. These increases are going to shape our gusset. So now just keep knitting until the very end of the round. Now for the following round, all we have to do is knit every single stitch. And when you get to the markers, just move the markers to the next needle and you will knit all those 4 stitches that we have right here. You're going to move the stitch marker again and you're going to continue till the end. So when you find yourself with the first marker, all you have to do is slide it to the other needle. Then the 4 stitches that we have in between those markers, you just have to knit them. Then slide the second marker and continue knitting till the end. For the remaining rows that we will be shaping the gusset, every other row will be just a plain row where we have to knit all the stitches. And for the following round, we have to knit all the way to the first marker. We're gonna slide it to the opposite needle, and the first stitch we have to knit front and back, just like we did on our first increase. Then we are going to knit every single stitch to the last stitch before the next marker. So the very last stitch of the next marker, we're going to repeat the knit front and back. So we have 2 increases again on this side in this round, and where we had 4 stitches before, now we should have 6 stitches right here in between these 2 markers. After you have done this, all you have to do is finish your round by knitting all the stitches. And then all you have to do is, for the following round, is going to be a plain round, which means all you have to do is knit every single stitch. You have to repeat these increases until you have 8 stitches between your stitch markers. If at any moment you feel confused, remember that you can go to craftytuts.com and follow the written pattern. Here I have finished all my increases, and now I'm going to bring my stitch holder. You can also use scrap yarn, and I am going to knit all the way till the very first marker, the marker for the increases, not the marker for the first round, of course. Let me just fast forward this section, since all I'm doing is knitting every single stitch. And once I get to the marker, I'm not going to slide it anymore because we're not going to need it. I am going to remove the marker, and so you should also remove the marker. Then I will grab my scrap yarn, or my stitch holder in this case, and I'm going to slide every single stitch in between those markers into the stitch holder. So just one by one, place them on the stitch holder until you get to the second marker, and then you're gonna close the stitch holder and remove the last marker. This is going to allow us to continue working on our glove and leaving the finishing of the thumb for later. Now we need to cast on 2 stitches to fill the gap. I am using the backward loop cast on, and these 2 stitches are the ones that we're going to use to replace the 2 stitches that we used at the beginning of the shaping of the gusset when we started doing our increases. This is going to allow us to have the same number of stitches as when we began making our glove with the cast on. So after you have created the 2 stitches cast on, just keep knitting until the very end of the round. Next, all you have to do is knit every single stitch in the round for 7 more rounds. And after that, we're gonna do another section of the ribbing right here. And then all we have to do is finish the thumb, and we'll have our glove ready. Here I have worked all the 7 rounds knitting, you can see right here. So now all we have to do is go knit 1, purl 1, just like we did at the bottom, so we can have a little bit of ribbing as well. So just go ahead and knit 1 and purl 1 until the very end of the round, and do it for a total of 4 rounds, just like we did in the beginning. After you work your 4 rounds of ribbing, of knit 1 and purl 1, then you have to cast off all the stitches, and we're going to have our glove almost ready. For the very final part, to make our glove, all we need to do is work the stitches of the thumb. So let's start by opening our stitches holder or your scrap yarn, if that's what you're using. Grab one of your double pointed needles and slide the stitches just like we did before, but this time we're going to put them back on the double pointed needle. So just one by one, insert that needle in the stitch and slide them. I place all my stitches in just one needle just to make it easier and faster. Now you need to pick up and knit 2 stitches in the little gap that we have when we had to cast on our stitches right here. This is going to close the gap, and we're going to have a closed thumb. What you have to do is cast on or pick up and knit 2 stitches. I have a little loop right here, and I just pull that stitch through. Sometimes it's a little tricky, but is really easy. Then I insert my needle onto the next stitch. I wrap my yarn around my needle, and I just pick it up and knit. So here we have the 2 stitches that we were missing. Now we can close our thumb. If you want, you can create a knot to keep it, but you can do that at the end as well and just weave it in. Now all you have to do is knit every single stitch of the thumb, and here I'm going to grab another double pointed needle to make it easier. I'll just keep knitting until the end of this round. For the next round, I am going to knit every single stitch one more time, and then all that is remaining to do is to do a little bit of the ribbing as well. If you remember well, is knit 1 and purl 1, and you're gonna have to do that for 4 rounds just like we did at the beginning and the end of our glove, so that way it's going to be the same size. And of course, all that is left to do is to cast off all the stitches and you're done. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you find it useful. If you did, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos like this.